The moment the harbor master reads my boat's name out loud at the Founders' Day registry, the entire dock goes silent. And then it explodes into laughter. "The driftwood sparrow," he says again, like he can't believe it either. "Captained by Bastian Vale." Someone in the back yells that they've seen bigger boats in a bathtub. Somebody else throws a fish head at my feet, and standing right in front of me, arms crossed, smirking like he already owns the ocean, is Renner Cade, heir to the Cade trading fleet, 31 warships strong, and the reason half this town treats me like a joke with legs. "Cute," he says. "Did your grandfather leave you anything else? A puddle, maybe?" The crowd loves that one. Somebody wheezes. Somebody else claps him on the back like he's just won a war instead of insulted an orphan. I keep my eyes on the boards under my feet, because if I look up right now, if I let even one of them see my face, they're going to see exactly how much this still gets to me, even after 3 years of practice pretending it doesn't. I don't answer. I just grip the splintered railing of the only thing I actually own in this world, and I tell myself the same thing I've told myself for 3 years straight. One day this laughter is going to cost every single one of them everything. I had no idea, standing there humiliated in front of half the harbor, that within 6 months I would be commanding a war fleet that could sink the Cade Armada without losing a single plank. I had no idea my puddle of a boat was hiding something no living person on this coastline had seen in 200 years. And I definitely had no idea that the storm rolling in that same night was about to change my life forever. But let's back up, because none of this makes sense without the boat. My name is Bastian Vale. I'm 22 years old, and until 3 years ago I had a father, a mother, and a normal life in the fishing town of Marrowtide. Then the fever came through the lower docks. It took my mother in 11 days. It took my father 4 days after that. And it left me exactly one inheritance. A cracked, gray, barely floating fishing skiff that my grandfather used to call the ugliest boat in the Vale line. Back when the Vale family actually meant something on this coast. Because here's the part nobody in Marrowtide remembers anymore. Or maybe they just choose to forget it. 180 years ago, the Vale name wasn't a punchline. It belonged to the Sea Marshals, the naval bloodline that once held the entire eastern coast together before the Iron Concord dissolved it, stripped the family of its fleet, and scattered its records so thoroughly that most people think Vale is just a fisherman's surname now. My grandfather used to tell me pieces of it when I was little, always late at night, always in a whisper, like the walls themselves might still be listening for the name after 2 centuries. He never told me the whole story. He'd get halfway through some fragment about a fleet lost in a single night, and then stop himself, shake his head, and say the past was heavier than any boat and I was better off not carrying it. I used to think he was just an old man telling tall tales to keep a bored kid quiet. Standing on that dock getting laughed at, I would have given anything for those tall tales to mean something. I didn't know any of that yet. Not that night. That night, all I knew was that the sky over Marrowtide Harbor had turned the color of a bruise, the wind was screaming through the rigging, and every real ship in port had already pulled anchor for shelter. Except mine, because mine was too small and too broken to be worth the effort of moving. So I sat alone in the driftwood Sparrow, soaked to the bone, watching the storm build over black water, thinking this was probably how I was going to die. Poor. Laughed at. Forgotten. The waves were already climbing higher than the hull, slapping against the old planks hard enough that I could feel each hit in my teeth. Every real captain in that harbor had made the smart choice hours ago. I was the only idiot left on the water, and some petty, wounded part of me almost wanted it to end that way, just to prove a point nobody would even hear. And that's when the boat started glowing, not metaphorically. Not the moonlight hit it just right. I mean the entire hull, every water-rotted plank, lit up from underneath with a deep blue light, like something ancient had just opened one eye after a very long sleep. I freeze. My first thought is that I'm hallucinating from exhaustion. My second thought is that the boat is about to explode and I should probably jump. I don't get the chance to do either, because right then, words appear in the air in front of me. Not written on anything, just floating there, carved out of pale blue light like they belong to something bigger than the storm around us. Vessel core detected. Bloodline match confirmed. Welcome back, SEA Marshal. I read it 3 times before my brain accepts that it's real. Then a second line appears underneath it. Hull integrity. Critical. Reforging available. Begin? I don't understand what any of this means. I don't understand how a fishing boat my father used to patch with tar and prayer is suddenly speaking to me in the language of a war machine. But I understand one thing with absolute clarity. For the first time in 3 years, something in my life is offering me a choice instead of just taking things away from me. Part of me wants to laugh. Part of me is convinced I've finally lost my mind after 3 years of grief and empty nets and half-eaten meals. But a bigger part of me, the part that's been quiet and starving since the day my parents died, just wants to know what happens if I stop being careful for once. So I say yes. The word isn't even fully out of my mouth before the boat convulses under me like it's alive. The old wood groans and splits and reshapes itself in real time, plank folding into plank, the mass stretching upward and thickening, the hull darkening from rotted gray to a deep, oiled black that seems to drink in the stormlight instead of reflecting it. I'm thrown to the deck, gripping the new railing for dear life as the entire boat reshapes itself around me like it's remembering what it used to be. When it finally stops, I'm not standing on the driftwood sparrow anymore. I'm standing on something that shouldn't exist. A sleek single-mast cutter, maybe twice the length of my old skiff, its hull humming faintly with that same blue light, runes I don't recognize carved along the waterline like veins. The storm is still roaring around me, but the boat isn't rocking anymore. It's cutting through the swells like they're nothing. A new line of light appears in front of me. Class Skiff, Tier 1, Core Level 1, Bonded Captain, Bastion Vale, Fleet Size, 1, Fleet Size. The word sits there in front of me, glowing, absurd, impossible. One boat is not a fleet. But something in my chest, something that's been dead and quiet since my parents died, sits up for the first time in years and whispers, not yet. I sail that boat back into Marrowtide Harbor at dawn, storm-soaked and half out of my mind, and nobody sees it happen because nobody's watching the water for a fisherman's orphan. That's fine. That's exactly what I want. Because if the Cades find out what just happened to my boat, they will either try to buy it, steal it, or burn it before I get the chance to understand what I actually have. So for the next 2 weeks, I lie. I keep the cutter anchored in a hidden cove outside town, wrapped in old sailcloth to hide the glow, and I go back to selling fish at the dock every morning with my head down like nothing's changed. Renner Cade still throws his little insults my way every time our paths cross. "Still floating, Vale?" he says one morning, like it's the funniest thing he's ever said. I let him have it. Let him think I'm still the same broke nobody with the joke of a boat. Because every night I sail out to that cove, and I talk to the light. I learn fast that this isn't just decoration. The core, as the system calls it, responds to combat, to risk, to the kind of desperate, high-stakes decisions that most sane captains would never make. It grows through danger, not comfort. And Marrowtide's waters, it turns out, are far from safe for a boat with no reputation and no crew to defend it. The first real test comes 11 days after the storm, when I run straight into a smuggler skiff twice my size hauling stolen saltfish cargo through the reef channel, a route everyone in town knows is controlled by the Hollow Tide Gang, a group of ex-privateers who've been terrorizing small fishing boats for 2 years and getting away with it because nobody with real power in Marrowtide cares enough to stop them. They see my cutter and they laugh, just like everyone else does. Big mistake. The moment their lead boat gets close enough to board, a new prompt flashes in front of me. Hostile engagement detected. Core combat protocol available. And then, before I even fully understand what I'm agreeing to, the hull beneath me shudders and 2 ram spikes punch out from beneath the waterline on either side of the bow. Weapons that were not there 30 seconds ago, weapons my fishing boat apparently always had the potential to grow, if it was ever given a reason to. I don't hesitate. I steer straight into them. The impact throws 2 of their crew into the water. Their hull splits along the seam with a crack that echoes off the reef walls, and for one terrifying second I think I've overcorrected, that my little cutter is going to split open right along with theirs. It doesn't. The reinforced bow holds, and my boat barely shudders while theirs is already listing hard to starboard, taking on water fast. Their captain scrambles to reload a crossbow with shaking hands, cursing at his crew to fall back, and I realize with a strange, cold clarity that these men who've been terrorizing fishing boats for 2 years are actually afraid of me. Of the joke of the harbor, my core lights up one more time. Core Level 2, new module unlocked, reinforced ram, Fleet size, 1. I sail home that night with 3 crates of stolen saltfish, a busted lip, and a feeling in my chest I haven't had in 3 years. Not since before the fever took everything. It isn't happiness exactly. It's something sharper. It's hope with teeth. Word starts spreading fast after that. Not that Bastion Vale has a magic warship. Nobody's that stupid to say it out loud. But that a small black cutter chased off the Hollow Tide gang in the Reef Channel, and that whoever's sailing it isn't someone to underestimate anymore. Small boats stop getting robbed on that route. Fishermen who used to avoid me at the dock start nodding when I walk past, and that's when the second thing happens. That's when I meet Ren. I find her half-drowned and clinging to a piece of driftwood 2 miles off the coast, in waters that any local sailor would tell you are too deep and too cold to survive in for more than 20 minutes. She's got burns on one arm, a torn shipwright's coat, and eyes that go wide with disbelief the second she sees my cutter's hull up close. "That rune pattern," she says, teeth chattering, voice shaking with something that isn't just cold. "That's Sea Marshal forge work! That died out 200 years ago!" For a moment I almost sail past her. It's late, the water's rough, and every instinct I've built up over 3 years of hard living tells me not to slow down for anything out here after dark. But something about the way she's clinging to that driftwood, refusing to let go even as her lips turn blue, makes me haul the wheel around anyway. I pull her aboard soaked and shaking, wrap her in the one dry blanket I own, and it's only once her breathing steadies that she opens her eyes and looks past me, straight at the hull. Turns out Ren isn't just some drowning stranger. She's a shipwright, one of the last people alive who was trained in old naval forgecraft before the Iron Concord banned the practice entirely, back when they dissolved the Sea Marshal bloodline and made sure nobody with the knowledge to build a real war hull survived long enough to teach anyone else. She was working for the Cade family before their ship had an accident that conveniently killed 3 of her closest colleagues and left her floating in open water to die. An accident she's very sure wasn't an accident at all, because she'd started asking questions about numbers in the Cade shipping ledgers that didn't add up. I should have just given her some dry clothes and sent her on her way. Instead, I tell her about the storm, about the core, about the boat that used to be a joke and isn't anymore. She stares at my cutter for a long, quiet moment, running her hand along the humming hull like she's touching something holy. Her fingers trace one of the rune lines near the bow, and I watch her lips move slightly, like she's reading a language most people forgot how to speak generations ago. Then she looks at me with an expression I haven't seen aimed at me in 3 years. Not pity, not mockery, but respect. "You have no idea what you're sitting on, do you?" she says. I tell her the truth, because at that point, I don't have the energy to invent a better lie. I tell her about the storm, about the light, about a fisherman's orphan who apparently comes from a family that used to matter. She listens without interrupting once, and when I finish, she doesn't laugh. Nobody has looked at me like that in 3 years. Like I'm not a joke. Like I might actually be something worth paying attention to. I had no idea. What I didn't realize was that the Vale bloodline wasn't just a footnote in Marrowtide's history. It was the reason the Cade family had spent 2 decades quietly buying up every scrap of old naval knowledge on the coast, making sure it stayed locked away, making sure nobody ever rebuilt what the Iron Concord tore down. Ren tells me this in pieces over the following days, and every piece makes my hands curl tighter into fists. The Cades didn't get rich by trading fish and salt. They got rich by making sure the Vale family never rose again. Ren joins my crew that same week. My first crew member, if you can call 2 people standing on a cutter a crew. She starts teaching me things about the core that the glowing text never explained on its own. How each combat victory feeds it. How salvaging enemy wrecks accelerates growth faster than fighting alone. How at a certain threshold the core won't just upgrade my current ship, it'll spawn an entirely new vessel bonded to the same fleet. "You're not building a boat," she tells me one night, sketching rune diagrams onto old parchment by lantern light. "You're rebuilding a navy, one ship at a time." That should have felt like enough of a plan. It wasn't. Because 3 days later, Renner Cade finds out someone's been running his family's smuggling routes dry, and he finds out exactly whose boat did it. He shows up at the dock with 6 of his father's guards, and a smile that makes my stomach turn. "Heard you've been busy, Vale," he says, loud enough for half the harbor to hear. "Heard your little puddle's been biting bigger boats than it should." He steps closer, close enough that I can smell the wine on his breath. "Here's some advice. Sink it yourself before I sink it for you. And this time, I'll make sure you're on it when it goes down. I don't say anything. I just smile back, and it's not a friendly smile, because for the first time in 3 years I'm not afraid of him. He has no idea what's sitting in that hidden cove behind my old fishing shack. He has no idea that his family's little joke of a rival is 12 days away from having a real warship under his command. He picked the wrong person to threaten. That night, the Corps delivers its next message, and this one hits different than all the others. Fleet capacity expanded. Second vessel available for construction. Materials required. Salvaged warship components. Tier 2. Locate the sunken graveyard. Ren goes pale when I read it to her. The sunken graveyard, she says slowly, isn't a legend. It's real. It's where the old Iron Concord fleet dumped every Sea Marshal warship they captured 200 years ago. So deep and so cursed with old naval wards that nobody's dared touch it since. She looks at me like she's about to talk me out of something, and then, instead, she grabs a rolled chart off her makeshift workbench. I know roughly where it is, and I know it's suicide to go alone. So we don't go alone. Over the next month, I do something I never thought I'd be capable of. I start building a crew. Not just anyone. People the Cade family has stepped on, cheated, or discarded, the same way they discarded me. The first is Oren, a navigator with 20 years of experience and a permanently revoked license, because 3 years ago he refused to sign off on a falsified cargo manifest for the Cade family and got publicly blacklisted for it. He's bitter, sharp-tongued, and the best chart reader I've ever met, and the first time I offer him a real position instead of pity, he just stares at me for a long moment before quietly asking if I'm serious. Then there's Iris and Sable, twin sisters who used to run one of the fastest cargo boats on this coast before the Hollow Tide gang burned it to the waterline over an unpaid protection fee, leaving them with nothing but a grudge and frighteningly good aim with a crossbow. Every one of them has a reason to hate the people running this coast. Every one of them has nothing left to lose, and by the time all 4 of us are standing on the deck of the Sparrow together, I realize this is the first time since my parents died that I haven't felt completely alone out here. By the time we finally sail for the sunken graveyard, I'm not captaining a fishing skiff anymore. I'm captaining a crew of 5, on a warship that used to be a punchline, heading straight into the one place on this entire coastline that's supposed to be a grave. The dive itself is brutal. Old wards flare to life the moment our salvage crew breaches the outer wreck field. Ghost lights and pressure surges that nearly crush 2 of our divers before Ren manages to key our Corps' signature into the old ward locks. For one long, terrifying stretch, it looks like the wards are going to win. Like 200 years of buried defenses are about to bury us right along with the wrecks we came for. Then, all at once, the pressure just stops, and the ghost lights fade to nothing, because apparently the wards were never meant to keep out Sea Marshal blood, only Iron Concord blood, and mine finally opens a door that's been sealed for 2 centuries. What we find down there isn't just scrap. It's an entire drowned fleet, resting in silence at the bottom of the world like a graveyard nobody bothered to bury properly. Broken masts the size of towers lean against each other in the dark. Hull plating stamped with the old Vale crest, my crest, rusted but unmistakable, is scattered across the seabed like pieces of a name someone tried very hard to erase. Cannons that haven't fired in 200 years still hum faintly with dormant core energy when Ren's torchlight passes over them, like they're waiting for permission to wake up. I hold one of the old crest plates in my hands underwater for a long moment, and even through the cold and the pressure and the fear of the wards still crackling around us, something in my chest aches in a way I don't have a word for. This isn't just scrap metal. This is proof my family was real. We haul up as much as 3 trips can carry, and the moment the last crate lands on deck, the Corps screams to life with more urgency than I've ever seen from it. Massive material influx detected. Second vessel construction initiated. The water around us starts to churn, and then, plank by plank, beam by beam, a second hull begins forming right there on the surface, rising out of the wreckage like the sea itself is giving something back instead of taking it away. By the time it's done, I'm standing on the deck of my cutter, staring at a full-size sloop of war floating beside it, black hull gleaming, cannon ports lining both sides, my family's crest burning blue along the stern. Fleet size, 2. We name her the Widow's Reply, because that's exactly what she is. I think, standing there in the dying light with my crew cheering behind me, that this is the turning point. That from here, everything gets easier. I'm wrong, and I find that out 3 weeks later, when the Cade family finally decides they're done underestimating me. They don't send Renner this time. They send his father, Magistrate Cade himself, along with a formal decree posted at every dock in Marrowtide. The Vale family's historic fishing rights, dormant for 180 years but apparently still technically on the books, are being re-abdicated, which means every route I've been using, every cove I've been hiding in, is suddenly under direct legal challenge from the most powerful merchant family on the coast. It's not a fair fight. It was never going to be a fair fight. But then the decree includes one more line, buried near the bottom in small print, and when Ren reads it out loud, her voice goes tight with fury. The Cade family is petitioning to have the entire Vale bloodline formally declared extinct, its remaining claims and properties, including, specifically, any vessel bearing historic Sea Marshal registry, seized and folded into Cade Holdings. They're not trying to run me out of business. They're trying to erase what's left of my family from existence, permanently, with paperwork instead of cannons, because paperwork is so much cleaner than admitting they're scared. I read that line 3 times, and each time it hits a little harder than the last. This isn't Renner throwing childish insults on a dock anymore. This is a grown man with real power, deciding that the safest way to deal with me is to make sure history books forget my name ever existed at all, the exact same way it happened to my ancestors 200 years ago. And that's when the real problem starts. Because a legal decree needs a hearing. And a hearing, in Marrowtide, means a public tribunal at the harbor court, which means in 8 days, I'm going to be standing in front of the entire town, forced to either surrender everything I've built in silence, or reveal it in front of the one family with enough power to make sure it never gets the chance to grow further. Ren wants to run. Take both ships, take the crew. Disappear up the coast and rebuild somewhere the Cades can't reach us. Oren wants to fight. Hit the Cade warehouses hard enough that they withdraw the petition out of fear. And me? I sit alone on the deck of the Driftwood Sparrow that night, looking at the crest burning on her hull. And I realize both of them are wrong. Running keeps me hidden forever. Fighting in the shadows keeps me a criminal forever. But if I show up to that tribunal, in front of witnesses, in front of the whole town that laughed at me 3 months ago, and I make them watch what their laughter turned into, that's not hiding, and that's not crime. That's a declaration. So I say yes to the hearing. Ren thinks I've lost my mind. Maybe I have. But I spend the next 8 days doing something I never expected to be doing 3 months ago. Training a crew, refining battle formations with the Widow's Reply and the Sparrow sailing in tandem, and pushing the core harder than I ever have, running combat drills against rogue reef predators and abandoned wreck guardians just to keep the growth climbing. On the 7th night, after a brutal drill that leaves half the crew soaked and exhausted, and the Widow's Reply's hull scraped along one whole side, the core delivers a message that stops my heart for a second. Threshold reached. Flagship construction available. Warning. Requires full crew commitment and major core sacrifice. Proceed? Ren explains what that means before I even ask. A flagship-tier vessel would dwarf anything the Cade family owns, but building it now, this fast, would strip both existing ships down to bare hulls for days while the core redirects everything into the new construction. If the Cades attack during that window, I'd have nothing to defend with. It's the single highest risk decision the core has ever offered me. Ren grabs my arm before I can confirm it. Bastion, if this goes wrong, we walk into that tribunal with nothing. No Sparrow, no Widow's Reply, no defense at all. I know she's right. I know exactly what I'm risking. But I've spent 3 years being the safe, quiet, harmless nobody everyone expected me to be, and it got me nothing but fish heads thrown at my feet and a dead family name nobody bothered to remember correctly. I say yes anyway, because I'm done playing it safe. Playing it safe is what got my family erased from history in the first place. The night before the tribunal, both the Sparrow and the Widow's Reply go dark, stripped down to bones, and a shape starts rising between them in the water, bigger than anything Marrowtide Harbor has ever held. I don't sleep at all that night. None of us do. We just stand on the shore, watching my family's name get rebuilt one impossible beam at a time. The morning of the tribunal, I stand on the shore staring at the space where my 2 ships used to be, now replaced by something so large it barely looks real in the pale dawn light. Ren checks the last of the hull seams one final time, her hands steady even though I can see the exhaustion in her eyes from 3 sleepless nights. Oren runs through the crew positions one more time, voice tight with nerves he's trying hard not to show. Nobody says it out loud, but we all know this is the only shot we get. If the crowd doesn't believe what they're about to see, or if the Cade family finds some way to twist it, there's no second chance waiting for us. The tribunal happens at midday, right on the public docks, with half of Marrowtide crowded around to watch the show. Magistrate Cade stands at the center, with his petition scroll and his smug, practiced calm, and Renner stands beside him, arms crossed, wearing the exact same grin he wore the day he threw my old boat into the mud. The Veil claim, the magistrate announces to the crowd, has been dormant for 180 years. There is no fleet, there is no navy, there is a fisherman's orphan and a single broken skiff, and this tribunal exists only to formalize what everyone already knows. That's when the harbor horn sounds. Not the Cade signal, not any signal this town has heard in 200 years, and every head on the dock turns toward open water. The driftwood sparrow leads the formation first, small and fast, cutting a clean line through the harbor mouth. Behind her, the widow's reply, full sails black against the sky, cannon ports gleaming. And behind both of them, rising out of the deep like something the sea has been saving for this exact moment, comes the flagship. 3 masts, hull plated in dark iron and old sea marshal blue. My family's crest burning across her bow bigger than any building in this town. The crowd goes dead silent. I mean completely silent, the kind of silence that feels louder than the laughter that greeted me at this exact dock 3 months ago. Old fishermen who've spent their whole lives on these waters stand frozen, mouths open, staring up at a flagship that shouldn't exist, flying a crest most of them haven't seen outside of a dusty history plaque in the town hall. Somewhere in the crowd, a child asks their mother if that's a real ship or a ghost ship, and nobody answers, because right now, nobody's sure themselves. Magistrate Cade's petition scroll slips out of his hand and lands in the water. Renner's smug little grin is gone, replaced by something that looks a lot closer to fear. His eyes dart between the flagship and me, like he's trying to do the math on how the fisherman's orphan he mocked for 3 straight years ended up commanding something that could level the entire Cade armada without breaking formation. I walk to the edge of the dock, and for the first time since my parents died, I don't feel small. I feel like exactly who I'm supposed to be. You wanted to know if there's still a Veil fleet, I say, loud enough for the whole harbor to hear. There's your answer. What happens next isn't a battle, it's a collapse. 3 of the smaller Cade merchant escorts, spooked and unprepared, break formation and retreat before a single shot is fired. The magistrate, publicly humiliated in front of half the town he governs, has no legal ground left to stand on. You cannot declare a bloodline extinct while its flagship is sitting in your own harbor with 200 witnesses watching it happen. His petition dies right there on the wet planks of the dock, along with every whispered rumor that the Veil name is a joke. Renner doesn't take it well. He never does. He storms off the dock red-faced and screaming threats that nobody in the crowd takes seriously anymore, because everyone just watched exactly how much those threats are worth now. Somewhere behind me, I hear someone in the crowd, one of the same fishermen who threw a fish head at my feet 3 months ago, say my name with something that sounds almost like awe. I don't turn around to look at his face. I don't need to. 3 months ago, that same voice was laughing at me. Today, it's not laughing at all, and honestly, that's a better victory than anything I could have won with cannons. That should have been the end of it. It wasn't. Because that night, alone on the deck of my new flagship with my crew celebrating below, the Corps delivers one final message, and this one isn't a growth notification. It's a warning. Iron Concord naval presence detected. 2 days out. Notice. Bloodline activation events are monitored. Welcome to the war your family never finished. I stare at those words for a long, long time. The Cade family was never the real enemy. They were just the local bullies standing on top of a grave 200 years deep, and I just kicked it wide open in front of witnesses. Somewhere out there, the empire that erased my family the first time is already turning its ships toward Marrowtide, and this time, there's no hiding, no quiet cove, no pretending to be a nobody with a broken boat. Below deck, I can still hear my crew celebrating, glasses clinking, Iris and Sable laughing about the look on Renner's face. Oren already sketching out new patrol routes like tomorrow is just another ordinary day. I don't have the heart to interrupt them yet. Let them have tonight. Let them have this one clean, uncomplicated victory before I tell them the truth waiting in that message glowing in front of me. Because I built all of this, the crew, the ships, the crest burning proud on the bow, to survive one spoiled merchant's son and his father's petty grudge. I built a fleet to survive one bully. I'm about to find out it was never big enough for what's actually coming, and somewhere out past the horizon, an empire that erased my family once before is already deciding whether to make sure it stays erased for good. The words are still glowing when the first shout goes up below decks. Iris laughing at something Sable said, glasses clinking together like tonight is just tonight. I don't move. I read the message a fourth time, like maybe it'll change if I stare at it long enough. It doesn't. Iron Concord naval presence detected. 2 days out. Notice, bloodline activation events are monitored. Welcome to the war your family never finished. 2 days. I say it out loud, just to see if it sounds any less insane coming out of my mouth than it does sitting there in blue light. It doesn't do that either. Ren's the one who finds me. She comes up from below with 2 mugs of something that smells like burnt coffee and salt, sees my face, and stops halfway across the deck like she's just walked into a wall. That's not the face of a man who won a tribunal today, she says. I turn the core message so she can read it herself instead of explaining it. I watch her go still, not scared still, focused still, the kind of stillness she gets right before she starts fixing something that's about to fall apart. 2 days, she says. That's not an invasion fleet. That's not enough ships for that. Then what is it? A scout? She says it the way you'd name a disease you already know is bad. They don't send the fleet first. They send one ship to confirm the rumor's real before they commit anything expensive to it. If the Concord's monitoring bloodline activations after 200 years, they've got a whole system for exactly this. Quiet, fast, in and gone before anyone official even hears about it. Below us, someone starts singing badly, off-key, and 3 other voices join in just to make it worse. My crew doesn't know yet. My crew thinks tonight is the end of the story, the part where the underdog wins and everybody goes home. I stand there on the deck of a flagship that didn't exist a week ago, looking at the woman who might be the only person alive who understands what's actually happening to me, and I make a decision I'm going to have to live with. Don't tell them tonight, I say. Let them have this. Ren studies me for a second, then nods slowly. One night, she says. Tomorrow, everyone hears it. All of it. I agree. Then I go stand at the bow, alone, and look out at open water like I can see the ship already coming, even though I know I can't. Somewhere past that horizon, an empire that erased my family once is sending someone to look at what's left of it. And all I can think, standing there with my crew's laughter behind me and cold wind on my face, is that 3 months ago my biggest problem was selling enough fish to eat. Now I'm at war with something that doesn't even know my name yet, and it's already decided I need watching. I don't sleep. I don't think I sleep once in the 2 days that follow, not really. What I do instead is prepare, because waiting for a monster to arrive is somehow worse than fighting one, and preparing is the only thing that keeps my hands from shaking. The next morning, I gather everyone on deck before the sun's even fully up. Oren's got charts under one arm before I even ask him to bring any, because that's just who he is. Always 3 steps ahead of the question. Iris and Sable sit shoulder to shoulder on an overturned crate, still half-dressed from sleep, matching frowns already forming before I've said a word. Ren stands apart, arms crossed, already knowing what's coming because she's the one who told me last night. I look at all 4 of them, my crew, my first real family since the fever took the last one, and I tell them the truth. There's a Concord ship 2 days out, now 1 day out. It's not coming to fight us, it's coming to look at us. To confirm what happened here actually happened. Silence. Then Iris, always the first to speak, says exactly what I'm thinking. And after it looks, then it decides whether to tell them we're worth an actual fleet. Nobody laughs this time. Nobody sings. Oren sets his charts down slowly, like the weight of them just changed. So the real question, he says, is, do we let it look, or do we make sure it never gets the chance to report back at all? And there it is. The exact fight I've been dreading since Ren said the word scout. Because both answers are terrible in their own way, and I don't have the first idea which terrible is smaller. Sable's the one who wants blood. She always is. We sink it, she says, flat, immediate. No witness, no report, no fleet. Simple math. It's not simple, Oren snaps back, sharper than I've heard him get with anyone but Renner. You sink a Concord scout, you don't slow them down. You confirm everything for them without them even needing to ask. A missing ship is its own report. Worse, even, silence tells them we're dangerous enough to be scared of. So we just let them walk right up and take notes on my fleet? Sable's voice climbs. Let them go home and tell whoever's in charge exactly how big a problem we are? Better a small problem on their books than a confirmed threat, Oren says. You don't wave a red flag at an empire and hope it just wanders off. They go back and forth like that for a while, voices climbing, and I let them, because I need to hear both sides pulled all the way out before I decide anything. Ren stays quiet through most of it, arms still crossed, jaw tight in a way I'm starting to recognize means she's holding something back. I finally ask her straight out. What aren't you saying? She hesitates. That alone tells me it's bad. I might know who's captaining that scout, she says. Every head on deck turns toward her at once. When I was still working the Cades shipping routes, she says, choosing her words slow, careful, like she's walking across ice she isn't sure will hold, there was a woman who used to come through twice a year, officially auditing cargo manifests for smuggling. Concord auditor. Never smiled. Asked questions that had nothing to do with cargo. I always figured she was Concord intelligence wearing an auditor's coat, because nobody audits saltfish that carefully, unless they're looking for something else entirely. She pauses. Her name was Yisolde Kane. If she's the one on that scout ship, this isn't a random assignment. She already had eyes on this coast before I ever pulled a rune off your hull. You think she's after you, I say. Not a question. I think, Ren says, and her voice goes thin in a way I haven't heard from her before, not even underwater, not even half drowned, that if it's her, she already knows exactly who I am, and I have no idea what that means for either of us. That's when I understand this isn't just about my family's history anymore. Ren has her own weight in this fight, her own debts nobody's told me about yet, and for the first time since I pulled her out of the water, I see something like fear cross her face that isn't about wards or drowning. The crew argument keeps circling. Fight, don't fight, don't fight, until I finally raise a hand and it actually stops, which still surprises me every time it works. We don't sink it, I say. Not yet. We let it look. We let it report exactly what it sees, and what it sees is a captain who isn't hiding and isn't afraid. If we ambush a scout ship in open water, we're the aggressor in every version of that story the Concord ever tells. I want them to have to come here. I want the first shot fired to be theirs. Nobody looks thrilled about it. But nobody argues either, which in this crew is basically a standing ovation. That night, waiting, is its own kind of torture. I stand watch on the flagship's bow long after everyone else has gone below, staring at black water, and that's when Corwin's shadow— no, that's wrong. I haven't met Corwin yet. Don't get ahead of yourself. That's when my grandfather's voice comes back to me, uninvited, out of 3 years of silence. The past is heavier than any boat, he used to say. You're better off not carrying it. I never understood what he meant until right now, standing on a warship that shouldn't exist, waiting for an empire to notice I'm alive. I think about asking Ren to tell me everything she knows about the Sea Marshal fall, the real story, not my grandfather's half-finished fragments. I decide I need to know before that scout ship shows up, because walking into this blind isn't bravery, it's just a slower way of losing. I find her below decks, still awake, sketching something by lantern light that looks less like a ship diagram and more like a family tree with half the names scratched out. Tell me the real story, I say. Not the fragments, not what everyone in Marrowtide thinks they remember. What actually happened to my family 200 years ago. Ren sets her pen down slowly. For a long moment, I think she's going to tell me it's not her place. That I should wait for someone with more right to the story than a shipwright who wasn't even born yet. Instead, she takes a breath and starts talking. Everyone thinks it was a rebellion, she says. That the Sea Marshals rose up against the Concord and got crushed for it. That's the version that survived, because it's the version that makes the Concord look justified instead of monstrous. She looks up at me. It wasn't a rebellion, Bastion. It was a betrayal. From inside your own family. The words land somewhere behind my ribs and just sit there, heavy. What do you mean, inside? I mean the Sea Marshal fleet didn't fall to Concord cannons first, she says. It fell because someone with Veil blood sold the fleet's positions, its ward codes, its command structure, straight to the Concord before a single battle ever happened. The betrayal is why the wards at the sunken graveyard only recognize Sea Marshal blood and lock out Concord blood. Your ancestors built those defenses after the betrayal, once they finally understood the danger wasn't only coming from outside the family. I don't say anything for a long moment. Somewhere above us, waves hit the hull, steady, patient, like the ocean's heard this story 100 times already and is just waiting for me to catch up. Who? I finally ask. Do you know who did it? No, Ren admits. That part got buried even deeper than the graveyard. But whoever it was, they didn't just hand the Concord a fleet. They handed them your family's trust. That's the wound that never healed, not the ships, the betrayal. She hesitates, then adds, quieter. That's probably why your grandfather never told you the whole thing. Some stories aren't just sad. Some of them are dangerous to say out loud, because saying them means admitting the enemy was never just outside the walls. I sit with that for a long time after she goes quiet. Somewhere in my chest, 3 years of grief and 3 months of rage reorganize themselves into something new, something colder and more focused. My family wasn't just erased by an empire. My family was handed to that empire by someone who shared my blood, and I have absolutely no idea if that kind of rot is still somewhere in what's left of the Veil name, waiting. That's when the lookout's horn sounds from the crow's nest, sharp and sudden, and every quiet thought in my head shatters at once. Sail spotted, Concord colors, inbound. I'm on deck before the second horn blast even finishes. The crew scrambles up from below half-dressed, boots hitting planks, Oren already shouting positions before I've said a single word, because we drilled for exactly this, and apparently some part of everyone's body remembers it even half asleep. I grab the spyglass from its hook by the wheel and find her on the horizon, the Grey Fang, low and narrow and fast, built for speed and reconnaissance instead of a straight fight. Concord colors dark against gray morning sky. That's her, Ren says beside me, voice tight. That's the same hull class Ysold Kane used to run cargo checks in. Could be her. Could just be the class of ship Concord scouts always use. She doesn't sound convinced by her own second guess. We hold position. That's the plan. That's what I decided 2 nights ago sitting alone on this exact bow, and I force myself to stick to it even as every instinct screaming under my skin wants me to run out and meet that ship head-on, wants me to make Sable's argument for her. The Grey Fang doesn't come close enough to hail, doesn't lower a longboat, doesn't do anything but circle wide at the edge of the harbor mouth for almost 20 minutes. Close enough that I can make out figures on her deck with the spyglass, one of them standing apart from the rest, still, watching, in a coat that catches the gray morning light wrong, like it's been treated with something that isn't just dye. That's her stance, Ren murmurs, more to herself than to me. That's exactly how she used to stand on the Cade docks, like she's already decided everything worth knowing and she's just confirming the paperwork. I keep my hands steady on the rail, even though nothing in me feels steady at all. Whoever that is, they're looking straight at my flagship, at the crest burning blue along the bow, and I know without a shadow of doubt that they're seeing exactly what they came to see. Then, as fast as she arrived, the Grey Fang turns and runs, sails snapping full, cutting hard for open water like she's got everything she needs and nothing left to gain by staying. The whole crew exhales at once. Iris mutters something about anticlimax. Sable doesn't say anything, just watches the retreating sail with an expression that says this isn't over, not even close. I should feel relieved. I don't. Something about how fast she left sits wrong in my stomach, like watching a predator walk away from easy prey, for reasons that have nothing to do with mercy. We track her for the next several hours from a distance, staying just far enough back that she shouldn't be able to make out our sails against the coastline. Oren plots her course, muttering course corrections under his breath, and somewhere around mid-afternoon he goes very quiet in a way that makes the whole crew lean in. She's not heading back toward Concord waters, he says slowly. She's slowing, circling, like she's waiting for something. Or running from something, I think, though I don't say it out loud yet. We close the distance carefully, cutting our sails low, using every trick Ren's taught me about reading wind against a coastline to keep from being spotted before I want to be. By the time we're close enough to make out details again, the Grey Fang isn't moving at all. She's dead in the water, not anchored, not becalmed, dead. Her sails are shredded, hanging in black scorched ribbons off a mast that snapped clean in half. Smoke curls up from somewhere below decks, thin and steady, the kind of smoke that means a fire's already burned itself mostly out rather than one that's still spreading. There's no crew visible on deck, none at all. Not fighting, not fleeing, not signaling for help. Just silence and wreckage and a hull listing hard enough to starboard that she's clearly taking on water somewhere below the line. That's not us, I say, because someone needs to say it out loud. We never fired a shot. I know, Ren says, and her voice has gone somewhere cold and careful I haven't heard from her before. We bring the flagship alongside, close enough to send a small boarding party across. Me, Oren, and two of the twins standing guard with crossbows loaded, because whatever did this might still be aboard. What we find below decks stops all four of us cold. It isn't Concorde damage. Concorde cannon fire leaves a particular pattern, splintered outward, predictable. Oren explains this in a low, careful voice while running his hand along a scorch mark that doesn't match anything he's ever seen. This damage came from inside the hull, in a tight, deliberate radius, like something detonated with surgical precision, rather than the blunt chaos of a naval broadside. And burned into the deck at the center of that blast radius, half melted into the wood itself, is a symbol. Not Concorde, not Sea Marshal, not anything Ren recognizes, and she spent her whole life studying naval sigils from both sides of a 200-year-old war. "I've never seen this," she says, crouching over it, tracing the edges without touching. "This isn't Concorde tech. It's not Veil forge work either. It's something else entirely. There are no bodies. That's the part that unsettles me most, more than the fire, more than the strange sigil burning cold into scorched wood. No crew, dead or alive, anywhere aboard the Greyfang. Just an empty, gutted scout ship, drifting silent in waters that were supposed to belong to a routine confirmation mission, and one signature scorched into the deck that doesn't belong to anyone I know how to fight yet." "She never got to report back," Oren says quietly, straightening up, looking around at the ruined ship like it's a question none of us are ready to answer. Whoever, or whatever, did this. They hit the scout before the scout could tell the Concorde anything about us. I stand there in the wreckage, wind cutting cold off the water, my grandfather's voice echoing somewhere at the back of my skull about a past heavier than any boat, and I understand, with absolute certainty, that everything I thought I was walking into 2 days ago just changed completely. The Concorde isn't the only power watching Marrowtide. Something else got here first,